So you're seeing the PowerPoint. Well, it's 6 o'clock, so we'll start. Welcome, everyone. And this is one of the workshops called Canvas the Basics. We're actually doing this, or I'm doing it this hour, and then again repeat at 7. You're always welcome to stay through a second hour or attend a workshop more than once, because sometimes you can get some questions answered. If we have a smaller number of people, we can also do a little more hands-on as well. Anytime during the workshop today, if you wish to ask a question, the easy way is just hold down your space bar. It's like push to talk, just like a walkie-talkie. And so that way you can ask a question and try to answer it. As well, if you look on your chat room, you could click on the chat room, and then that will allow you to ask a question. And the chat room is really good if you're teaching a class or doing a workshop, running a meeting, in which you have a lot of participants and you cannot necessarily take every question and answer every question in that limited amount of time. So it's kind of good advice to remember to use the chat room. You can do private messages and also group messages. And then one of the things you can do, you will always get, as a host of a meeting in Zoom, a transcript, and you could use that transcript actually then to do not necessarily track attendance on Zoom. That would be better through reports, but you could certainly track questions and conversations and have that as a running idea list perhaps for your class or your training. So, and I should say, in terms of Canvas, Canvas has uses well beyond teaching. You could use Canvas for a departmental purpose. You could use it for connecting, if you're a full-time faculty member, department chair, connecting with part-timers. You could use it as a staff member on campus and share resources and do a lot of powerful things. And so we'll talk about all those possibilities. If you're interested in the slew of trainings going on, this is the basics training. And we're also doing, I did today, a modules and pages. I'm currently actually creating video on that, and then I will be doing probably Saturday and Sunday, going dark Thursday and Friday for the sociology interviews that we're doing virtually, also through Zoom. And we'll have something on discussions, assignments, and announcements. And then I'll probably run again, maybe the Zoom one, maybe the video one, we'll see. After we start getting a critical mass through these trainings, and I think right now I'm at about over 150 with all of you today. So we've had good numbers of people. Those are some repeat people as well. It's not unique individuals. But then I think we want to move into more open workshops. And so on Tuesdays, I'll do my teaching talks, which will consist for this like kind of coronavirus era, as check-in times to share concerns, to express frustrations with teaching, with learning Canvas or technology, and even to check in and do a little bit of therapeutic intervention. We all certainly in these times need some psychological, spiritual, existential, whatever that applies to your condition. We all need just some of that, just to process and understand. Certainly our students will need it. Staff members, other faculty we're working with will need it. So it's a good reminder. So the Tuesday teaching talks will become more of an open, flexible, zoom in and have a conversation. We're also we'll be piloting one-on-one assistance, and we're still trying to decide what that's going to look like. But between me, Treva, and some others on campus, we will have some opportunities to come in and work with you individually. I had a faculty member today, for example, email me, didn't want to say, keeping the person private, but said, I'm really concerned because I don't have the technological skill set, and so I really want your help. And so there's a lot of that right now, and we're trying to manage that as best we can. But the strategy is to begin globally with getting all of you trained on the basics, and then getting more and more specific to your needs. So again, we're tracking the folks that participate in this basics workshop, and then if you are scheduled to teach a face-to-face class in spring through our technology grant, we will then be providing that stipend. A few people ask me when is that happening, and I can tell you right now, as you might guess, offices right now are in a state of chaos, flux, whatever you want to call it, and we all are. And so that is not necessarily going to happen soon. We're going to get through all the trainings, create our list, and then we'll work on processing that through the grant. So don't expect that necessarily to happen soon. Flexibility, so we're flexible with one another, and I think some of the messaging you may want to communicate in your online class, if you're teaching an online class through Canvas, is to really tell students that there will be need for flexibility. If any of us are teaching or working, or students taking a class and we become sick and incapacitated, because of the virus, that is another scenario that we haven't worked out. There's a whole technological thing. I'm not going to jinx it by saying anything about that, but I will just say I've been in some conversations recently about our firewall and maybe just some of the issues that could happen if we have a lot of strain on our various systems, whether it's Zoom, whether it's Canvas, which is hosted through Amazon. So if that goes down, that means the Defense Department goes down because, as you probably know, Amazon hosts most of the world, it seems like. So flexibility, we can maybe just program that into our mindset and also communicate that with students and others we're working with. So the goal of this training is to get you up to speed on the basics of DE instruction, and I always say that means distance education. A few folks, when I was using the acronym, said, what is F to F and ISP and DE? So DE is distance education, our traditional using Canvas online here, virtually. Face-to-face is that in-person class where you meet in a physical classroom. And then ISP is our incarcerated student program teaching. So we'll get you up to speed on the basics of Canvas. And then again, referring to that outline, if you want more, probably on Friday, I would say, or late on Thursday, after some of the interviews, I'll get the schedule out for the weekend. I'm programming in quite a bit for this weekend because I feel like we're all going to be home. We're going to be maybe bored. We're going to be looking for the social communication outlet. We're tired of Netflix or whatever, watching our Netflix queue. And so I think it's actually a good opportunity to use some of this downtime and time at home and under quarantine to workshop of all things. So Canvas Enhanced versus fully online. So in the past, we've certainly had many people, maybe some of you, who've taught a course for us that's a face-to-face, so a physical classroom class. And you do what's enhance your class through having a Canvas shell. What this means is that you want to have for your students the syllabus on hand. Maybe you're trying to save your carbon footprint so you don't copy the syllabus and hand it out in class. Same thing with handouts. When I first started teaching ages ago, I won't say when that was. I'll make myself feel old. But when I first started teaching, I remember giving people tomes of handouts. We don't do that so much anymore, and one of those reasons is we're trying to certainly be environmentally conscious. So even before coronavirus hit, we were doing a lot of this in our traditional face-to-face classes. I also did it because I didn't want students necessarily, I don't want to say waste 2 class periods, but if I gave a midterm and a final, what could happen is I'm losing 4 hours of class time because the students were taking those exams. If I give that in my Canvas shell, it becomes open book, so there's maybe that issue if you're concerned, but then I gain that time in the classroom. So as we move to fully online, we're actually then taking some of those components of what we did in an enhanced class. The one main difference is we're adding the stuff we're doing right now. That is the interaction. So the interaction, as I'll talk about today, could be video, synchronous video. It could be asynchronous video where you do a lecture or a tutorial related to a software program you're trying to work on. Or if you're a Chelsea, you're teaching an English class, maybe you would diagram on a screen a paragraph format, talk about that, or do a grammar lesson in a very visual sense. We can use any of those techniques, and of course we can also use discussions which are text-based, and I will do a workshop this weekend on text-based discussions. So there's a lot of what we were doing in the past, and we're now transforming that through the online format. And those of you that heard President DeFranco and others, I guess there were 200 on for the webinar, and I apologize, I had communicated that it was going to be all video, and I guess they decided against that because there were so many participants. So a lot of the stuff here we've heard about already. We know there are some worst case scenarios. I saw our board of trustees just passed or is announcing an emergency meeting for tomorrow night where they will pass an emergency resolution that gives the board, the president, a little more flexibility with making financial decisions or evacuations or things of that nature. So very fast moving. I think it's very true to not panic. It's a little cliche now, but every industry is undergoing cataclysmic changes right now, so certainly we're no different. And if you run across a faculty member or a staff member who says something like, well, I don't think we should be offering these classes online, it's not the best for our students. The retort I would have would be, Well, would you rather the students not have access to those classes and we cancel them? Indeed, some of these classes that have pure lab components or pure requirements of a CPR dummy that is licensed by some state agency, we indeed may have to cancel those. But the not panicking, I think, also includes a little bit of messaging where we say, let's really try to be positive about this as best we can, because the stress that we express in the class, our students will pick up on, and presumably vice versa, right? It does have kind of a contagious effect. So this has changed since I created this. So indeed, in a sense, we're going through, the president had 3 levels of types of closure. It was red, was it green? Red and orange, I'm forgetting. He had that in his PowerPoint.
Orange.
What's that?
Green, orange, and red.
Green, orange, red. Yeah, so red is like total hard close. We shut down everything. Orange is just essential staff would be on campus. And then green was kind of what we're at now. We're slowly reducing physical access to campus, like the FEC, the CDC, Child Development Center at the end of the week. And he did mention, the president, that you will need, past this next week, an ID if you need to get into the building. But, my personal advice on that, when I left the other day, I took everything I needed and said, I really don't want to expose myself. And I live with someone who has a real compromised immune system. So, I'm taking my own precautions, as we all should. Now, the good news about this is I'm really starting to feel, with all of your energy, many of you have done more than one of these with me, that I'm starting to think there are things we can do via Zoom, things we can do via Canvas that actually you can't do in a traditional face-to-face class. As an example, when we did a Zoom training earlier, I was talking about the private chat. And if you're teaching a group counseling class and you have concerns, a student wants to tell a story in class, but he or she is afraid that it could trigger someone, or they're concerned about expressing something that's very painful for them, such as, sexual assault or something of that nature. What you can do using Zoom is do a private message to the instructor. In a traditional face-to-face class, the only thing you could do is, ask the instructor to talk with the student during break or in office hours or something. So it's kind of interesting if we might discover through this process that there are actually opportunities to do things better or in new ways that we could not do in a traditional face-to-face class. I've been doing online teaching since 2004. Done research on it, published on it. So I'm a big proponent of it. I also will, of course, admit there are always limitations. There are limitations in a traditional face-to-face class. I could certainly tell you stories, and many of you could as well. So I want to mention there are some other resources. The president mentioned today in the all-campus webinar that some of these are being sent out. We're creating websites. Right now, if you go to my teaching and learning website, I'll put that in group chat. Anything like that I'll try to give to you. And I'll just pull it up real quick. So what you will see is a series of resources, and one of these actually I think could be useful for these times. I'm trying to update it. It's the COVID-19 here at the top. So you could click on that, and this is having current, I'm trying to update this, and I'm a little, my time's been pretty crazy. I'm trying to give you contacts. I'm trying to give you some overviews of distance education, and I'm in the process of, like the video tonight, I'm recording, and then I will get those up online on my YouTube. But this will have above and beyond some of the information I'm sharing in the workshops. I may be doing a syllabus workshop this weekend. Stay tuned for that. If you want to learn more about the inbox in Canvas and the deep dive of some of what I'll cover in this workshop on the general stuff, and then some of those auxiliary workshops coming up on discussions and video and so forth, this gets into even more depth. So you can check it out. I'm trying to update it as we go along, if I find new resources and so forth. So, and I'm trying to date that too. So check that out if you're interested or in need of more. So to get started today, we'll start at the beginning. And if you've already done this, that's fine. It's really nice to review some of this. I've actually discovered doing a lot of Zoom workshops. This is probably the 15th or something I've done in a week or so, that I'm learning much more about Zoom. I feel more nimble with it. The same thing is said of Canvas. If you're teaching for the first time, you will not necessarily know everything, but the good news is you can learn, and you can also really limit the functions or the features that you're using. That's one of my big messages for you today, is not to try to do too much. So to get started with Canvas, all of you have, if you're teaching in spring, a Canvas shell, and you go to ltcc.edu and use your typical credentials to sign in to Passport. So for me, it's Lucas, my username, and then my password. And then you'll go on the quick links, and 5 down or so, if it looks the same as mine, you'll have a Canvas login. You'll log in on that. And then this will take you to your sort of home page, your control center for everything related to Canvas. And I see it's moving slowly. I hope that's not a sign of things being strained. Okay, it's not too bad. So this is your dashboard. Now, mine looks a lot maybe more robust than yours. I have more classes up here. Basically, anything that you're maybe enrolled in as a student, say for training purposes, Learning Canvas, Instructors Academy, what's called a Sandbox, which is a almost like a test shell that you're building up, and then eventually you can use that and import it into your actual class. So I have quite a few of these. Now, if you have one class in spring, right now Treva set up these classes, and they should be populated with students as well. So you would click on your class. Now, if you don't see it right here, there's one step you can take. You click on Courses, and this is, by the way, what we call our global navigation menu. It's pretty handy. You may not use all of these, but you'll probably use your inbox. You might use Studio and Commons, as we'll talk about. The calendar, I don't know. I'm not a big user of the calendar. You might be, but just have to see. Well, go to this menu if you don't see your class on the dashboard. Go to the bottom, click on All Courses, and this is where everything shows up. So it should be here, and typically what will happen is it'll have like future enrollments. As you can see, I have other instructors. Because of my role, and Treva as well, we have admin roles, and often we're reviewing other shells. We have them for resource purposes, so I have more than you would probably normally have. If there's a grayed out arrow, it means it does not show in your navigation menu. If there is a colored orange star, it's colored in with orange, that means it will show in your navigation. So all I have to do is click this, or I could unclick it. Some of these I probably want, but maybe I don't need this. Actually, I maybe will need that. I'll take the Math 201 out. I don't have to save at the bottom. Normally, I'll tell you everything in Canvas when you update your syllabus, when you update any content page, you always want to look for the blue tab, either at the top on the syllabus page or the bottom on the pages or modules. I guess, no, modules don't have that, but pages have an update button or a publish button. So on this, you don't have to do that. It will automatically repopulate whatever will appear on your dashboard. So now, if you noticed, I mean, I had a lot, but the Math 201 is now gone. Okay, so anyone at this point, have you had any issues with locating your Canvas shell? Any concerns about that? If you want to hold your space bar, we could just take a question on that or a comment. Is everyone okay on finding stuff so far, perhaps?
I found mine.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and if you haven't checked yet, then you could do it offline. Talk to me if you have any concerns. And so that's going to be the first step is finding your class, locating it there. Let me just jump back to this outline because I do have these in order. I'm not going to say too much more about the Zoom video. I think a lot of you now have your your pro account set up. I will give this one more time to you. This is just going to give you, it's in the chat right now, the sign up place to convert your typical Zoom account, your basic, to pro level, because you will want to have, if you're doing synchronous video in your Canvas class, more than a 45-minute limit. So I'll just mention that there. And by the way, if you're noticing, there is an issue actually with I've noticed in these webinars, and it's a little distracting because sometimes our mouths and the audio do not sync up, and it's just the technology there. So it is occasionally a little distracting. I notice when I'm talking and I'm seeing that unsynced speaking with my voice. So I mentioned to you how to log on. Now you do have another option. You can access Canvas through, of course, Passport, or you could use the mobile app. And the mobile app, I actually will say, is pretty decent. You will find there's a teacher version and a student version. The yellow is the teacher, the red is the student. I have both on my phone, to be honest with you. I probably don't need the student one. I might just delete that. But what's interesting about the teacher app, the yellow one, is you load it up and you're going to notice immediately that it's taking a second here. Things are being slow. Hopefully not my Wi-Fi, but it's going to have a very similar structure. So you're going to see that view that I mentioned, which is your dashboard view. So you would click on your class like you would with your mouse. And once you click on that class, it will take you to a menu. This is where things start to look a little bit different on the app as compared with the Passport web portal. So what I will say to you on this is I've actually used the app. It's very handy for grading. I've been on trains in Europe where I'm passing the time. I've got free Wi-Fi, and I will go on and actually click on my discussions. I will reply to students, reply to the discussion boards, and I'll actually use sometimes the dictate feature. It's pretty good, at least on an iPhone. So that's where you go to your keyboard, you click on that little microphone symbol, all of a sudden you see a waveform come up, and then you speak into it and it translates what you're speaking into the text. It's good to proofread. I've noticed my iPhone, if I use the word context, which I tend to say a lot in social science, it always wants to write content instead of context. And sometimes you could try to enunciate or really say it, but you still occasionally will get mistakes. And some of the mistakes you get are sometimes funny when it's like something really vulgar that the dictation comes up with, which I don't know how it gets that. But what I'm suggesting to you is if you want to use the mobile app, if you want to use it for grading, if you want to use it for checking your inbox, which I'll get to in a second, it's really useful because it's so portable. If you want to do anything like updating your Canvas site, if you want to update a discussion board, if you want to do massive amounts of grading, like your entire discussion for the week of 30 students, I really do not recommend the app. I would definitely say don't use the mobile and go back to the Passport version. But like many things in these workshops, it's up to you. It's your level of preference. It's what you desire in terms of like interfacing with technology. And there's a whole thing about like human design studies of how we interact with technology, including like phones. I mean, the number of hours and millions of dollars spent just on figuring out stuff like that, even in some anthropological senses, is pretty interesting. So for me, the easiest to navigate and the most robust in terms of going in and changing content and doing mass grading is always going to Passport and clicking on the navigation there. So I will mention then, and when I say LMS, it means Learning Management System. Moodle is another one. Canvas is becoming really the big one across the country. So we'll go back to our sample shell. So that's this one here. And I just want to describe a few of the features here on the global navigation menu. A lot of these here, these on this other menu, which I always call, I don't know the proper name for it, it's the smaller gray menu. This I call the course menu. The global navigation menu has a few features that I feel like you'll only use once, maybe your entire time teaching for us or something like that. You're not going to have admin. That is for folks like me who have kind of those more global permissions. If I click on my account, I will see a lot of choices here. A lot of this stuff I don't necessarily need. Things like files, I don't necessarily have to deal with these here. I don't recommend you adjust your notifications. When you click on that, you get this crazy look at that. And I was mentioning to someone, I don't even know what Blueprint Sync is. I couldn't tell you what some of these features are, and that's kind of a point. I've been using Canvas for as long as anyone on campus, but I don't use every feature. So I don't really go in and adjust my notification preferences. What the notification preferences do, or the purpose of the notification preferences, is really to say, do you want to be notified about everything going to your email? The trick is this, your students can go in and do the same. So sometimes you say, well, I have my announcements going and all my students are getting their announcements, not just to the course site, but to their email. And I say, not necessarily. Because again, if I go on there and I take that off, right, if I change that notification, what then happens is that doesn't go to me or to my student, depending on the preferences. So I wouldn't mess with this. I think the defaults are fine. Now, one aspect under your profile, I really do advise you to make sure, where is it here? Things are starting to blur together. It's under settings. Okay, this is super important. So for those of you using integration of Zoom, which is what we're on now, in what's called CCC Confer, which is something we're going to talk about here in your class. It allows you to schedule, host these video meetings through the Canvas shell. If you're planning to do that, important to have your two email addresses synced. What I mean by that is you need to, of course, to get the non-basic account, to get the pro account on Zoom, use your @ltcc.edu email address. Okay, got that done. You upgrade to the pro account. I discovered this the other day. It took me over an hour to problem solve it. Totally simple, but never thought of it. What I had was I had this starred. I had my scottlucas@yahoo.com starred. Long story, but years ago we discovered that our LTCC email was throwing a lot of important communication into spam, and so some of us started switching. And anyway, a lot of us have 2 email addresses. Well, if I do that, because Canvas sees that as my primary email address, when I get to the Confer Zoom integration to bring in Zoom as part of my Canvas shell, it will not work. So what I have to do is go to my, again, profile under my account and make sure that the LTCC@edu is the only one that's starred. And you could only star one. You could add quite a few email addresses, but the starred one is your primary one. So if you don't have that set up and sync those 2 email addresses, your LTCC email address, that same email address, not 2 different places, then you'll run into some troubles, and you actually then cannot operate Zoom within Canvas. Some of these other integrations and apps I'm not going to get into. Canvas, if you get really into the weeds, you can do a heck of a lot of stuff. It's super, super powerful. So let me show you one other feature on global navigation. Again, all honesty, I don't use a calendar. If you do, it's a nice feature. It basically will show you when assignments are coming up. Students can do the same as well, and it's actually pretty decent. I just don't use that calendar. I use this calendar and try to just track on my own through the syllabus when assignments are due. You may discover, by the way, everyone has their own technique of how they might want to schedule their assignment due dates. For my particular class this quarter I'm teaching in Canvas, I just have it set as everything is always due on Saturday at 5 p.m. And that way the students know for 11 weeks their discussions are always due on Saturday at 5 p.m. They know their exams will be due on 2 Saturdays throughout the quarter, but always at 5 p.m. So you can come up with your own system. It's entirely up to you. There's a lot of built-in redundancy in Canvas. I've been on many student disputes related to grade changes where a student would claim that it wasn't clear on Canvas where things were listed for due dates. And that argument always kind of fails because the redundancy of having things listed in so many places, it auto-generates your assignments at the end of the syllabus. There's the calendar view. There's anything you put up there. There's also the assignment view. So in so many places, students are reminded of due dates, but certainly you can think about due dates in your own context of grading. Now, one of the cool things is the Canvas inbox. So the Canvas inbox is, for all practical purposes, the local email system through Canvas. And so, Treva, our DE coordinator, might send me a message. Very easy to use. I hit reply right here. I type in my text. I hit send. I'm not going to do that because I'm not really going to send it. And it goes to that person. I can click on this icon, and that is always traditionally an upload. That's going to upload a file, a PDF. Probably you don't want to use a big video file. I can also click on the record media content, and now I'm getting 2 versions of myself, so I'm kind of freaking out here because the lack of sync between 2 cameras is really uncanny. But the whole point of this is I could hit start recording, and at that moment I am then recording a video message to my student or to whomever I want to respond to. If you're wondering, on any of these settings here, you'll see this a few times, the microphone you really don't have to adjust, nor the webcam. I have a, I don't know where I put it, higher quality microphone, and if I have that hooked up through USB, I could alter that. But for the most part, you're not going to change this, assuming you're using one webcam and so forth. I'm going to stop that because I am so out of sync, it's making me crazy. So in any case, that's pretty nice, right? Because you can do a personalized video message, you can do a personalized audio message. If you like, when you do grading, which I'm not doing a lot of covering of grading in this one, I'll cover that in my assignments workshop. But if you do grading, you can actually do audio grading. The students click on the file, and then it will play the audio file. You can also do a video version of that. It's actually not that labor intensive. You might find that recording the video is quicker, depending on your typing speed, than typing. So it's a possibility. Now, just to familiarize yourself a little bit with the menu at the top is anything related to inbox. You could forward a message and star it for emphasis. You could delete a message. It will delete the entire thread. And you see here there's also some options as well, both places. You can reply all, you can reply individually, and you can compose a new message. One of the cool things about composing a new message is you select your course, which could be a favorite course, I'll just pick, I'm not going to do it, but let's see if my current one, oh come on, right there. So this is my current Race and Ethnic Relations Soc 107 class. Now if I type the subject and I type the message, then, and of course those same features, attach a file and also record or upload media, I can send that to the whole class. It could go to each individual, kind of like a BCC, a blind carbon copy that some of us use for privacy. So now that's an option, but I could do this. I only want it to go to one student in my class. And I happen to know, because she emailed me about, actually it was good, there was a little error, I didn't grade 2 student assignments in week 7, and she said, hey, did you know? I said, no, I didn't, thanks. And I always check at the end of the quarter if I have any, you'll see in your grade book, if you use the grade book in Canvas, a little dash, and the dash means it's ungraded. And there's actually a way to set up to treat ungraded a certain way in the grade book. But so I could type her name in, and then immediately it will pick up her name just based on that, and then I can individually send it to her. So it's really a nice feature where you can really customize. Now, if you're asking, well, why should we use the inbox and why not just send it to their individual email? And I'll throw that to you. Who wants to answer our question? Why am I recommending using the inbox in your Canvas class instead of just replying or sending messages to students' LTCC emails? Question of the night. Who wants to answer?
Well, my guess is that it's a better form of communication with your students as a class.
It's better, yeah, and the reason it's better, it's not like, it's how it looks. I mean, I think it's actually a pretty nice graphic interface, the threading here. It's sometimes our students do not read their or check even their ltcc.edu email. There's a lot of messaging going out. I know with Naomi, who's on right now at Financial Aid, we're trying to get information to students because we want to process and continue to give them their financial aid or scholarships and all this kind of stuff. So always a lot of conversations on campus about how to best connect with students, text messages, email, Canvas inbox. We're messaging right now, hey, if you're a student, please be sure to check your email. It doesn't mean they will. So the best solution for me as a recommendation is use the inbox exclusively for students in your class. For colleagues, for work situations, it's a different level because most of us who work or teach are required, to use our emails. So I would definitely make that recommendation. So let's just see. That was communication. One other global thing that's really handy to look at is the student view. We'll go back to the main class that was showing you. And student view is going to show you exactly how the students see the class at that moment in time. To engage it, you just go to this menu that I don't know what to call, this mini menu that's gray, and I click on student view. The minute I click on that, you get the magenta banner at the bottom. And what this is showing me now is only the stuff that a student can see. So things that I've hidden, such as if I hide my pages from the view here on navigation, that I could see actually when they're hidden, but my students can't. Students won't see that. If there is an assignment that hasn't opened up, they will not be able to access that or see that. If there's a grade book, they cannot obviously view because of FERPA, other students' grades and so forth. So it's really handy. I use this a lot of the time. So a student might email me and say, or inbox me on Canvas and say, hey, quiz 1 you said it was going to open on Wednesday and it didn't open. What's going on? And so I will say, let me check on it. I go to student view. I click on quizzes or exams, whatever I call it, and then if it's not showing up or not available, I say, okay, I made an error. I then leave student view. The magenta banner goes away. I go back to that. I edit it. I fix it, and then I can go back to student view. So in a sense, it's almost a way of final testing what is happening in your class, just to make sure that it's working the way that you want it to work. So your students can see it and it's effective and so forth. So I'll jump on here and then we'll break it a little bit for some Q&A. I want to talk then about creating a class and what you might do to create your class at the initial stages. As I noted before, Treva has already created shells for all of you. So if you get a chance today after the seminar or over the weekend, take a look at it and make sure that that is actually available. I'll then talk about ways of adding content to your class, and I've grouped this into 3 main categories. And they all involve different things, and I would say different levels of difficulty. So to go back to my class shell, let me show you then. Actually, let's go to a test shell. I'm going to just create a new class here. You don't have this privilege, but it's something that is, again, part of my role. So I misspelled it, but that's probably okay either way. So let's see, I'll call it testing. And then I will give it a certain sub-account and then call it a sandbox. So this is just a blank class. And in fact, when you first log onto your class, it should really look like this. The only exception is when you click on people, it really will be populated with students from your class. They won't see the class yet until you hit publish. Until you actually publish here, that class is not, and it's not letting me because nothing's there, but it'll go green, and then based on that, students can then view the class. When you first get it, it's blank, no modules here, and you see all this clutter here. We're going to talk in a little bit about how to clean this up and give a little more navigational clarity to our students as well as ourselves. It has everything under the sun here on the navigation menu. So to add content, an easy way to begin is I might go to my course setup checklist. This is very global. You rarely use this, I would say, after the first bit of your class because it's all stuff at the beginning. I could then import content, and this would be primarily if there's another class that I've taught in the past, and it could be a different class, but I have the same policies or materials, and I want to pull those into my class, I would then copy that Canvas course. Now, a lot of you might be saying now, I don't necessarily have that, I don't have access to a class. Reach out to us, reach out to your department chair, to your deans, Allie or Brad, because there may be a class that we can get to you from a previous instructor. So there's an opportunity. It could save you a little bit of work, because what you would do is import that Canvas course, and then you would tweak it. You would go in and change the syllabus to your name and your styles and the readings and so forth. So that's option one. That's the easiest because you have so much set up for you. Option two is something that's called Canvas Commons, and I really like Commons, and it's found right here on your global navigation menu. You click that, and the minute you click it, a menu will come up and a search bar. And this used to be 89,000 since I've been doing the workshops, because everyone is getting online across the country, K through 14 and beyond, graduate school. These results have gone up by 1,000, a couple thousand. So what I could do then is, like if I were teaching, if I'm Chelsea and I'm teaching an English class, I could type English, and whoa, that's 3,500 results. So like any kind of search you do for content and keyword searching on the internet, it's really probably important to narrow that down a little bit. So I'm just trying to think of something like if I type in grammar and see what comes up. Yeah, okay, 1,000 results, still a lot. And we know obviously English is a basic skill, and so it's going to have more results. If I type in something like if Solange is teaching something in audio production, 400 results. Okay, so it's a little bit less. So what's cool about this is you can go on, and these are color coded and icon coded. So green is always a module, a course is blue, an assignment is purple, a quiz or an exam is I guess that's orangish or brownish of some sort. So you can then click on any of these and decide if you think it's worthy. If you want, you could suck it into your shell. It will take it to the appropriate place. If it's a quiz, it'll go in under quizzes. If it's a module, it'll go under modules, and you can go in and adapt it to your heart's content. I actually added a few of these for you. You're welcome to use them. So type in LTCC. And I added 3 of these. We see Sean Ryland has some chem stuff here. I added logos if you want an LTCC logo. Very easy to incorporate that and download it to customize your site. I also added today for our module workshop basic modules, so you can incorporate this if you want the 11 weeks. And then lastly, this is probably the most useful for you, is a syllabus module. The syllabus module has all of our current catalog policies on dishonesty, on behavior, all our board codes relevant to any kind of discipline issues you might have in a class. And then there's a sample syllabus. If you click on that, you can again bring this into your class. Anything with a bolded X or 4 X's you would just change to your readings and to your name and etc. So these are not all the policies. It's not going to work for every class, but it's an opportunity to save yourself a little bit of work in these times in which we are struggling just to try to make sense of the world and all that other kind of stuff. So definitely take advantage of Commons. If you want to incorporate something, type in the keyword check out the content. It doesn't hurt to download it. You could always delete it if you don't want to use it. And because it's Creative Commons, open source, you can always adapt and adopt, and no issues there. So the last way to bring in content into your class is the hardest, and that is from scratch. And so what you will do is go to your class, and this is already built out. But what I could do is, for example, if I taught this class face-to-face in the past, or even an ISP, depending on my folders on my hard drive, I might type in SOC 107, and it will pull up, I think. Yep, it's going to pull up, say, my folder from a previous quarter when I taught this class. And so if I already have some discussions that I can incorporate in a class, or I have a syllabus, or I have a word cloud from when I taught it in a face-to-face format, I can then bring all of that information in very easily via cut and paste, say through Word or a PDF, or I can use the Files tab. And anytime you work with content in Canvas, the Files tab can be very easy to use because it allows you to simply load things in. And then once those things are loaded in, for me it's all these PDFs, which are readings. I then can insert it anywhere and incorporate it anywhere in my content, in my modules, and so forth. And if you're not entirely sure what a module is and some of that, again, take one of the more in-depth workshops just on that topic. You can also bring in images. So I have my word clouds here, and then I can also search Flickr for Creative Commons images. So Lange, please, question.
Dr. Scott,
Yeah,
I wanted
Scott's
to
fine.
find out. I wanted to find out. My class is brand new. There's been no history with my classes from scratch. How would I input material?
Yeah, so what I would say is you probably three options for you. One is to try to reach out to colleagues and see if they've taught it. So if you have people in the recording industry that you know, or film industry, a lot of those folks, I just know with watching a lot of music podcasts that many of them teach at local universities or Berklee College of Music or a place like that. So you could reach out to your colleagues and say, do you have anything, or can you send me in a direction? That's option one. Option two, for some disciplines, maybe not yours because we don't have a long history of teaching some of the digital media arts classes, would be to reach out to a department chair or dean. In your case, there isn't a department chair per se, or there is a dean, but just knowing your subject, I don't think that'll be available. So then I think the option becomes Creative Commons, so going into the Canvas Commons to see what's available. And then if that doesn't work, do, as we all do, a Google search. So go onto Google, and whatever topic you are working with, you can start to just type. I've done this actually for my race class. There's a lot of academic articles, but for example, if I was teaching about the concept of a microaggression, which is one of our topics, I can pull that up. I'm not going to necessarily go to Wikipedia, but I might find some really good videos, and it's like, oh, well, what's this one and what's this one? Oh, there's a TED Talk on microaggressions, and I honestly source a lot of content this way because it's often very accessible. TED Talks are not always the best for academics, but they're pretty good for a conversation starter. So what you might find is then use that same keyword searching in Canvas Commons, and then also do that just with a typical Google search, and you might begin to find some of that stuff. And we can also talk offline. Very easy to import. So if I'm going to import a video, and on my video workshop, again, very simply, I take what's called the URL. So the URL here allows me to copy it, and then I go back to my class, and very easily I can incorporate that little chunk of content just about anywhere in the class imaginable. As an example, I could add it here, wouldn't make sense, but I'll just throw it on my syllabus, and then immediately it generates the link. There's fancier ways of doing that with the media insert buttons and all that, but that works pretty well. The same thing works with an article. So if I go back to my microaggression search, here's something on BuzzFeed. I don't know if it's good, but we can test it. I just cut and paste, Option, Command, Apple, whatever, C, and then V into my shell. And the same deal. In this case, it's already populated it with the hyperlink. Anytime you want to remove a hyperlink with any content, it's always this one here. It removes it. Add it. I put it here. I type it in. Insert the link. So super easy to do. And you can do that in any content page. You can do it on the syllabus. You can also, if you find a PDF, there are sites like Scribd. And it's not free. And Scribd, I guess I should say, I occasionally will find some how can I say, copyright violations on Scribd, but Scribd is something you traditionally have to pay for, or there's a limit. But you often will find articles on here from magazines. You will find PDFs, and again, there might be some questions about copyright violation. I probably shouldn't promote it, but it is a legit, consumer website. I think it's $8.99 a month. So there are places on the internet, but don't underestimate the power of a simple Google search. Again, it might not be the best thing you're looking for, but through process of elimination, you can typically find some good content there. So maybe more on that offline. And again, crowdsourcing suggests reach out to colleagues, to professionals, to other faculty, to staff, to deans, if there's any possibility that we can help you with some of this information. Now, one initial thing I want to mention, and I'm going to try to keep it right till 7 because I have another one coming up, and some of you could jump into that next one. We'll just see who shows up for the second hour. But one thing I want to mention is when you first start your class, you're typically going to go to your settings page, and you'll get a message, I would say, a week from now, I don't know, from Treva, our DE coordinator, saying, please make an adjustment to the start and end date of your class. And she'll tell you what to set that as. She'll also tell you whether or not to have these checked or unchecked. That's really all you have to do, and I'm not going to say more about that. You get the message. If you want to add an image here, you simply will click on this, and it will allow you to upload an image. If you don't do that, it will simply on your Canvas shell or navigation page for students when they see it, it'll just name the class, and it'll have like a color banner. It's not a big deal. You don't have to get super custom. Navigation is pretty handy on this page. So the key is anything on the top is going to show in your blue tab navigation menu for the class. Anything on the bottom will not. And it says that in both places. It's drop and drag. So anything I don't want, I just drag down here. This is one of these you have to scroll to the bottom and hit save. The minute you hit save, it populates it, and it's then adjusted. I typically will tell you, totally subjective, but I like to keep this navigation menu around 5 to 10 items. I'm just a little concerned if there are 20 items up here, the amount of clutter, it adds a little stress for our students. So think about what you want. You can always drag and change the order of these. Really easy. You'll see the same thing in the modules where you drag and drop and always hit save to save the position of those particular tabs that students will navigate with. So that's like pretty handy to know there. I'm just going through this. Let's see here. Adding features. So we'll go through a few features. Again, these are the main features. If you recall with the curriculum I'm building out for the workshops, I'll do a separate, I did it today on modules and pages. I'm making videos for those as well. Do another one on announcements and assignments, one on discussions, one on video, another one on Zoom, as many of you participated in. So if you're interested, you could target one of those very specific trainings. But right now, we can look at just a few of these features. Now, in terms of the syllabus, I do have on my main website a pretty extensive set of modules, if you will, or samples and snippets that I've crowdsourced from other faculty on campus. I just put that in the group chat. I will likely do my module workshop because I have it all built out and I can just run it for an hour. So I might do that over the weekend. It's pretty easy for me to do, but it has a lot of information that, again, doesn't require you to reinvent the wheel in terms of getting a syllabus up if you don't have like a good syllabus that you're comfortable with. So the syllabus is found in the syllabus tab. It's very easy. You hit edit. We won't go through the rich content editor, but it's really nice. Basically, your text functions are up here that are very similar to what you see in Microsoft Word. It's kind of a similar approach there. They leave a few of those functions on the bottom as well in terms of font and paragraph styles. You don't have to use those. And then all of these buttons here range from tables, insert a media, record media, equation editors, YouTube editor, which has been not working for me recently. It's a little weird. Insert an image, hyperlink, and so forth. So everything you see here on a syllabus, when you start to work with a page or you start to work with a module, it's going to be the exact same content editor, and that's why it's not that hard to learn Canvas, because it's always the same formatting wherever you go. There could be some additional options at the bottom for dates or release times or something, but it's always the same content editor, which makes it kind of nice. So certainly good to look at your syllabus and think about what you want to include with your syllabus. I will do a workshop on assignments and quizzes. It's a little confusing. Assignments can include a number of things. It could include a discussion. It could include a quiz. When you add an assignment, you name it. You can always add files to it, our same content editor. And then I can group assignments and create a group. So if I want to create a new group and call it papers, if I'm an English instructor, I do that. And then all of a sudden I have 3 categories. And that's for organizational purposes, potentially also for grading, because you could do point values and things of that nature. Often you'll add a point value right there. You will define the submission type, which could be an external tool. It could be a text entry. If you're an English teacher or social science teacher, anyone doing a lot of papers, if you click VeriCite, that will allow you to run all the student papers through our plagiarism software. Highly recommended that you do that. And then there are some features here, assigning due dates and availability dates and so forth. Again, always hit save. In a lot of areas, you also have to hit publish. And if something's not published, typically it'll be grayed out, such as in a module. If I have an unpublished module, it will look something like that versus the green. This is not, I'm making sure it's not a live class, so I'm not messing up my students this week. So modules then are another important feature of Canvas. And I always say, I recommend, I just did a workshop today on modules, I recommend you hide pages from your students. And in this view, these are available for me to use, but the icon is saying it's disabled, not available to students. The reason I'm telling you this is if students see a bunch of pages, these are basically chunks of content without rhyme or reason. They're alphabetized. You can click creation date, ascend, descend, edit, ascend, descend. But it's not good for a student. If I'm a student, I jump on here, and the first thing I see is maybe something, if I just, let's see, did it this way, and I clicked on, I don't know, week 11, and it's not week 11 yet, it's going to be super confusing for me as a student. So what I recommend to you, and check out my modules video or take the workshop coming up, use modules. Modules are a way, basically, is a way to create navigation in your class. It sets up a logical framework, a pathway to get started in the class. You can even go on and set what's called a prerequisite. If I do a new module, I can name it, and then I can add a prereq, which might be like, you have to do test 1 before you do test 3 or something like that. I can also lock modules using that same calendar tool that you've seen for a certain time and date to appear, say 2 weeks from now. Totally up to you. I personally don't do a lot of prereqs and dates because I think it could add confusion, but some people like to do this, to have students learn an early skill that then needs to be synthesized or integrated into a later skill or later assignment. And I also like to have my instructor information. I like to have my policies up front. Again, the policies and some of this you can download from Commons through some of the resources I created for you. And then I often will have a module that talks about the type of work they do in the class, what to expect, and then I do a schedule. Now, you might arrange your topics by themes or books that you're reading in a literature class or something else. I do it by weeks, and then I have kind of symmetry with every week, the same approach: videos, discussion boards, readings, etc. So it's entirely up to you. We won't get into module creation, but basically when you create the main heading in your module, you'll add pages to that or assignments, and then it begins to populate everything here. And I often say that if you add something under modules, a new assignment, a new discussion, it'll get added under this tab and vice versa. So it's just a paralleling, if you will, of content in different places. So I mentioned the syllabus. I'll just run through the last few concepts here just to mention them to you. Again, to give you some insights about what to expect. Suggested structure, again, it's really hard for me to say, but maybe I advise you at the beginning of your module somewhere to say, getting started. Here's how you start the class. Put clear information about how to do the readings, about how to access the exams, about how to write the papers and all that kind of stuff. Announcements are basically virtual post-it notes. You go to the Announcements tab, you click on New Announcement. You'll get to see here, there's always like, a blue tab on Canvas. And then you type the title, and you type the text, and this is the same rich content editor you've seen in every other place. The same file structure that you can insert a reading. The same image that allows me to insert an image. It is super easy. It's the type of editor, for the most part, we call like what you see is what you get. So I type something in, or I click on something, it does what I am doing. If you do HTML editing, totally different, but for our purposes, stay on rich content. You can delay posting on a particular date. You can allow liking of it, I guess, to make it more like social media and so forth. So announcements are pretty easy to incorporate in a class. You can also, I mentioned files earlier, I won't go through that again. I've said throughout these trainings that a fork in the road for you might be to decide if you want to use the Zoom functionality and do live synchronous video, or if you want to do asynchronous video using some of the media content editors available, or use text-based discussion. In a text-based discussion, there isn't really video going on. You could do video grading, but I might create a topic, and then the student replies to the topic, and then a string of text, not unlike the threads you see in the inbox, will appear. So it's really up to you. It's your pedagogy, it's your class, it's your decision. If you do want to do live video again, some other workshops on this, we can discuss some of the options there. One of the things I will say to you is the live video is really nice because, again, you could go, I've already showed you that one insert video. That's really nice to use. The minute I record it and I stop it, it's in my class. I don't have to host on YouTube. I don't have to do anything. It's there. It is as easy a device to use as possible. The one that's a little more bells and whistles that's worth it and still easy is Canvas Studio. You'll see Studio often on your, depending on what you have on your navigation here, but it's always going to be right there. This is a new add-on that we're piloting through the technology grant called CVC OEI. Really easy to use. I hit record, and then I might do a screen capture, and then I will see a series of options coming up. It takes a second to load, but the options will include, not unlike Zoom, the ability to record just the screen, the ability to record just my face with the webcam, or to do both at the same time. And of course, it's being slow right now, so maybe we'll just, we'll look at that. But I do really recommend it. It's a great tool, and it's something I think you'll find to be really valuable. And if you're interested in that, check out the workshop on using video, and also, of course, the Zoom workshop, which is an opportunity too. I've mentioned links, just using that icon in your pages, and then, of course, at the very end, we will ask you, you'll go back here and you'll actually publish that class. I'm going to unpublish it since it's not a real class. And I know I've talked. We have a couple minutes left. So if you want to ask some questions, this is by no means, you're not going to learn Canvas in 1 hour, but hopefully you get the lay of the land, basic features. Again, I recommend do the basics for your purposes of creating a class for spring. And once you do that, I'm suggesting to you, you have a syllabus, you have modules, try to hide the pages. You have some assignments and announcements. Maybe assignments are going to be based on if you teach English and it's a paper versus a multiple choice quiz in another class. You have discussions or video or both. And once you decide on that, then you can start to target creating that content and then also taking advantage of some of the workshops coming up over the next week or two as we continue to really work with all of you to get these emergency classes, as we can best call them, set up for spring quarter DE teaching. So any questions, comments? If you want to unmute yourself with the space bar, hold that down, ask a question, a comment, concern.
Scott, I was curious, how do you hide pages like you were talking about there?
Yeah, very easy to do, Chelsea. So it is, all I have to do is go to my settings, and then let's see, I have to find it first, but where's more pages? They're right here. So if I move it here and I hit save, then it's no longer going to have that little gray icon, right? So pages are now here. And again, that means on student view, the student will be able to click on that. So what I want to do is go back to settings and then drag it down here, always save it at the bottom, and then once I've done that, it will disappear. Now, if it has that, it says, well, we recognize that you're still going to edit your pages, but we don't want students to be able to see them. And the reason I say this is if you just jump onto pages, you're not going to know where to begin the class. And I actually just discovered that this week. I'm like, oh, the class I've been teaching for 10 weeks now, I have the pages visible. But I've trusted that my students mainly click on the modules because I give them instructions at the beginning. Start the class by looking at the modules, and you'll have the better way of navigating the class. So yeah, big recommendation. I really think it's worth your time just hiding the pages from the students. So anything else, or I think I might need like just a 2-minute break before the next one. So I will go ahead then and stop the share. And if you want to jump on to the next one, just take that. In fact, where is that? I could I can put that in the chat right now. Maybe if you don't have that, the URL for the next one, just so possibly if you want to join, and if it's smaller, we can do a little more. Maybe workshopping on that, but let me just give you that next one. So if you want to take part in it, you may, and it's just right here. I'll put that in global chat and give you a second to look at that if you want to use that, and then I will just go ahead and like stop the share here in like 30 seconds or so we can start the next workshop. So yeah, great. So well, thank you all for participating. Maybe we'll see you back over the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, into the next week for more workshops, and one more tonight here at 7, which will be basically a repeat of what we've done here in this first hour. So thank you all and good luck. I'll be in touch soon.